On the 3rd of February 2014, UK Border Force opened a suitcase at London Heathrow Airport and were surprised, when looking for something else, to find 13 iguanas. 12 of those iguanas were alive, one was dead. Of course, these iguanas, which had come on a flight from British Airways to London from the Bahamas, were CITES listed. And so UK Border Force contacted the Bahamas Government with the question, do you want them back? Yes, of course we want them back. But where did they come from? London was saying they were San Salvador iguanas. A couple of researchers and myself doubted that they had actually come from San Salvador. Well, the next 3-4 months, the great negotiations took place. And I have to say the Bahamas Government was absolutely brilliant, as was the Bahamas National Trust, as was our colleagues of the Iguana Specialist Group. And arrangements were made to bring these animals back. So on the 9th of July, they returned to the Bahamas and were met by the Deputy Prime Minister at the airport and flown by the Defense Force down to San Salvador. I am taking the story from there, the conservation update on the Sandy Cay Rock Iguana. But before I do, I want to thank all those people who were involved in arranging for those iguanas to return to the Bahamas. This story, the contributors are Dr. William Hayes, Dr. John Iverson, Jill Jollay, who you're going to hear from next, Phillip Weech, Steve Smith, Pat Hayes, Sheila Iverson, and James Traverse of Ardastra Gardens at that time. I'm also going to thank Bailey and Lorraine Smith and Stephen Cole in the Exumas, who were of great help to us. The Bahamas is home to 3 species of rock iguanas. The top one you'll see is Cyclura, and the picture was taken by my colleague Chuck Knapp. The one on the left is Cyclura carinata, which is found in Booby Key at the eastern end of my iguana. And I'm delighted to say that that key is now protected. We share that animal with the Turks and Caicos. The other iguana is Cyclura rileyi, and this picture is of the Sandy Cay Rock Iguana. This is the subject of this presentation. The Cyclura rileyi exists in San Salvador, and as it's the nominate species, that is why the species is called the San Salvador iguana and was the cause of much confusion in the identification in London. The other subspecies are Cyclura rileyi nucalis, which is down in the Crooked and Acklands Islands, actually on the keys in the Bight of Acklands, and also on a key in the Exuma Keys Land and Sea Park, where they were translocated in 1973. The other population is the Sandy Cay Island population, Cyclura rileyi cristata, and they only existed on this one 14.9 hectare key. The iguanas are all protected by the Wild Animals Protection Act of 1968 and the Wildlife Conservation and Trade Act of 2004. They're also on the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species as endangered or critically endangered, and they are on CITES Appendix I. This was one of the animals that were intercepted at Heathrow. Having first been reported as San Salvador rock iguanas, we decided that they should go down to San Salvador. However, on their way back to Nassau, it was discovered that although Border Force had put in new pit tags into these iguanas, when they were scanning it, they actually found other pit tags. These were pit tags that had been put in on Sandy Cay. So not only did they morphologically look like the Sandy Cay iguanas, we now had confirmation that they were in fact Sandy Cay iguanas. But they were on their way to San Salvador. And that is where Tom Rothfuss very kindly built pens and looked after the iguanas in San Salvador in quarantine until we determined where we were going to put these iguanas. These are the 9 iguanas that survived. 3 of the iguanas died within 24 hours of return to the Bahamas. And I have to say, they are not being throttled here. The hand that's holding them is Scott Johnson's. And I can tell you that he was holding them with great affection and great gentleness. So we decided, over the time they were in San Salvador, that we were going to put them onto another key, not back on the key they had originally come from. And in 1978, I had investigated the key, Pigeon Key, and it seemed suitable for these iguanas. It is 20 kilometers from the source key. So with Mr. Phillip Weech and Lindy Knowles and the botanist Ethan Threed, we went and camped on the key in August. And we determined that the key was, they determined, I already knew, but they determined, yes, it was suitable for the iguanas, and the government approved the translocation. So now we were getting set for a translocation, which we did. Again, they were taken from San Salvador to the key and released. Now we had on this key 9 iguanas. 8 were males, only 1 female. We needed some more iguanas to join these. So we got to get together a team, and the team consists of the co-authors that I mentioned at the beginning. From left to right, we have Stephen Smith of the Bahamas National Trust Park Warden, myself, Bill Hayes, John Iverson of Earlham College, Sheila Iverson, Pat Hayes, Jill Jollay, who will be presenting next, and Phillip Weech, the director of BESS. Missing from the photo was James Traverse, the then animal curator at Ardastra Garden Zoo and Conservation Center. He was only able to stay with us for 1 day. Also worthy of mention, as I did at the beginning, was Bailey and Lorraine Smith with their boat Malamina, and Captain Stephen Cole of Off-Island Adventures, who gave us logistical support and transport and lifeline to and from the Keys. The team gathered in Georgetown, Great Exuma, and together in 2 boats went to Sandy Cay and set up camp for 2 nights. James Traverse is in the center of the photo with Stephen Cole. When we arrived on the Key, William Hayes did a rapid iguana census of the Key, noting the numbers and distribution of the iguanas, concluding that the population was looking good overall on Sandy Cay, coming up with a population estimate of 1,186 to 1,779. Meanwhile, John Iverson showed his enthusiasm while demonstrating how to catch iguanas by being blooded with the first 5 minutes of being on the Key. John drew up a grid of the Key with approximately equal-sized areas identified as A to H. When an iguana was caught, the location letter was written on the pillowcase holding the iguana for processing. Not only did this enable the team to release the iguanas in the area they had been caught, it also enabled us to select animals from across the Key for translocation. Our boat captain stayed with us for the day, helping out and photographing, and James Traverse left with boat captain Stephen Cole. Each animal had its own log, and its data entered on a database, an Excel sheet. We all worked as a great team, catching and processing the animals. Unless we knew they would not be selected to go to Pigeon Key, they were held in their pillowcases until the final decision was made. If they were be released back on Sandy Cay, they were dotted with whiteout and released where they had been caught. The list shows that all the different processes we went through. The number was sequential, which is important when you see a number later on. Location where it was caught, its sex, its weight, its snout vent length, tail length, head width, pit tag. Some of the animals had already been pit tagged. Those that had not were given a pit tag. Blood was taken, scale height was measured, toes were examined as to whether they'd broken. Beads. Some of the researchers in the past had beaded these animals. So some still had beads or a bead hole. That was noted. The color, these iguanas have slightly different coloring. It was photographed and either destined for Pigeon Key or was released back on Sandy Cay. But the question is, what's going on? 13 iguanas smuggled to UK, 11 male and 2 female, 1 death in transit to the UK, and 3 dead within 24 hours of repatriation. Therefore, 9 iguanas released on Pigeon Key on 13 September 2014, 8 males, 1 female. 78 iguanas were captured by us on Sandy Cay on the 24th to 26th of March 2015. 76 males, 2 females. 26th of March 2015 from Sandy Cay to release on Pigeon Key, 25 males, 2 females. Total 33 males and 3 females on Pigeon Key. Is this really the ratio? I should at this point mention that this subspecies was brought to the brink of extinction in 1997 by a single feral raccoon, which preyed heavily on adult iguanas. By the time the raccoon and the dense population of black rats were eradicated in 1997, surveys suggested that less than 200 iguanas remained. It was also observed that the population was greatly skewed to males. What we have now is the same anomaly, but during the intervening years after the removal of the raccoon and rat eradication, significant reproduction has been taking place on the Key, i.e. Bill's rapid assessment in 2015 of 1,186 to 1,779 iguanas. This is where our future research is desperately needed to determine whether we are correctly sexing these animals. They're sexed by probing. Our boat captains returned on time mid-morning of Thursday the 26th. We had already packed up and released the iguanas that were remaining on Sandy Cay back in the locations where they had been caught. We hand-carried in their pillowcases the 27 iguanas that were bound for Pigeon Key. After a smooth journey, we arrived on Pigeon Key at 11:30. We released the iguanas on the same spot where we had released the other iguanas. The exercise was carried out without any mishaps, with the exception that John Iverson sustained a gash on his leg, which was treated by a physician in Georgetown. We saw iguana tracks in the sand and heard one iguana moving through the bushes. The weather was hot and clear throughout the expedition, with only one short-lived shower. I'm going back. That is now number 83, which is confusing because we were numbering all the iguanas we caught sequentially. That does not mean there were 83 iguanas on Pigeon Key. And I'd like to thank you all.